Across the world, money moves in cycles, obligations, and promises. Every country, whether small or an economic powerhouse, carries debt. The United States alone holds about $38.27 trillion in public debt, 125% of its GDP, Japan roughly $9.8 trillion, 220.6% of GDP, and China around $18.68 trillion. Even wealthy nations like Germany, the United Kingdom, and France sit around $3 to $4 trillion each. In 2005, total government debt worldwide reached $111 trillion, while overall debt, public and private, increased by $7 trillion to hit $318 trillion in 2024, equal to 328% of global GDP. The pressing question: if everyone is in debt, where does all this money go? Welcome to Solstice Finance, where human behavior, money, and systems meet. It is not just numbers on a balance sheet. It is a tool, a structure, and a mirror of society. Every financial boom and crash, every crisis rests on a network of promises that, if you follow the chain of creditors, you discover that most debt is owed within the system itself, but the benefits are far from equal.
Where did all this begin?
In 1694, England was at war with France and running short on gold. The king turned to merchants and agreed to give them interest payments funded by future taxes in exchange for a £1.2 million loan at 8% interest. To manage this deal, the Bank of England was founded on the 27th of July, 1694, as a private bank to finance the war. It was a revolutionary moment. The state could spend money it did not yet possess, and lenders received a tradable government promise. This is how the government bond was born. France and the Netherlands adopted the idea. In the United States, the revolution was financed through this system, and by 1783 the debt had reached $43 million. Alexander Hamilton declared that national debts, if they are not excessive, will be to us a national blessing, and he proposed issuing bonds and levying taxes to fund them. But thus shifted from a mark of failure to a measure of credibility. The ability to borrow became the ability to rule. How did debt grow this large? Over the centuries, every war and every crisis pushed debt higher. In the United States, debt stood at $75 million after the Revolutionary War, then rose to $3 billion after the Civil War. After the 2008 financial crisis and the impact of COVID-19, the debt-to-GDP ratio surpassed 118%. Today, U.S. debt exceeds $38 trillion, more than the combined economic output of China, Japan, Germany, the UK, and India. Interest payments alone consume 13.5% of every dollar the U.S. Treasury spends about $1.12 trillion in 2025, and they are projected to double to $1.8 trillion annually by 2035. In May 2025, Moody's stripped the U.S. of its last AAA credit rating, citing politicians' failure to control deficits. A closed loop of debt. Who holds the other end of the rope? In the United States, 2/3 of the debt is owned by domestic institutions such as banks, pension funds, and mutual funds. The rest, around $9 trillion, is held by foreign investors, led by Japan, with about $1.15 trillion, followed by the UK, at $99 billion, and China, with $730 billion. Investors buy treasury bonds. Then the Federal Reserve buys a portion of those bonds and creates new dollars in exchange. Citizens pay taxes to cover the interest, which then flows back into retirement accounts. Globally, Japan buys U.S. bonds. The U.S. lends to Europe through the IMF. Europe finances developing countries through the World Bank, and those countries hold their reserves in Western bonds. That has become a planetary relay race where each country holds the other's IOUs. Markets, central banks, and crises. Behind every bond is a network of institutions, hedge funds, sovereign wealth funds, and central banks managing tens of trillions. They are the arbiters of credit, deciding who borrows cheaply and who pays a premium just to survive. When confidence falters, currencies fall, and governments collapse, as in Greece's 2010 debt crisis, which led to brutal austerity, or Sri Lanka in 2022, where a shortage of foreign currency caused defaults on international loans and widespread fuel and food shortages. Banks are the beating heart of this machine. When the Fed or the European Central Bank buys bonds, they create new money in return. Every dollar in circulation is a unit of debt. There is no such thing as money free of debt. The system runs on confidence. As long as investors believe governments will pay interest, even if they never repay principal, the wheel keeps turning. Interest and inequality, the phrase "we owe it to ourselves" is only half true. In reality, 3.4 billion people live in countries that spend more on interest payments than on health or education. Public debt in developing countries has grown twice as fast as in advanced economies since 2010, reaching $31 trillion. In 24 alone, these countries paid $921 billion in interest, minus 10% more than in 23 dashes, and 61 countries devoted more than 10% of government revenues to servicing debt. Developing countries pay interest rates 2 to 4 times higher than the United States, squeezing development spending. Among OECD members, interest costs climbed to 3.3% of GDP in 2024, exceeding defense spending for the first time. This means interest is eating resources that could have gone to infrastructure, health, and education, widening the gap between rich and poor. The system rewards those who own debt securities and punishes those who merely work to pay them. Future risks and the need for reform. As debts grow and interest costs rise, the system becomes more fragile. Half of the debt of low-income countries will mature over the next 3 years, much of it denominated in foreign currencies, exposing them to default risk. Higher military and infrastructure spending in Europe and the US makes bond markets more sensitive. If investors pull back, interest rates can spike, refinancing can stall, and new crises can erupt. Faced with this reality, organizations like UNCTAD are calling for urgent reform of the global financial architecture, making it more inclusive and creating effective mechanisms for restructuring debt. Experts also suggest strengthening local capital markets in developing countries and providing more concessional financing, because dependence on dollar-denominated debt leaves them hostage to Federal Reserve policy swings. Conclusion? Endless promises? The debt has shifted from bondage to balance. Governments do not plan to repay principal. Instead, they continually refinance their obligations. Debt has become the heartbeat of capitalism, pumping money through every loan, bond, and pension. This cycle depends on confidence. If it breaks, we are reminded that debt is ultimately a set of promises. Promises that may not be kept forever. Interest flows from ordinary people to large institutions, widening class divides. In a world where everyone owes everyone, there is no single villain. Governments issue the debt, banks multiply it, investors trade it, and citizens rely on it. If we don't understand this cycle, we become its victims. If we do, we can make better financial decisions, push for fairer reforms, and use investment tools without drowning in debt. If this analysis resonates with you, hit like and subscribe to Solstice Finance. Here, we dive into the systems, strategies, and psychology behind money to help you navigate complexity, understand risk, and make informed choices.